Hello, everyone. Welcome to Eye on Africa. Here are your headlines on this Monday. Dozens of suspected jihadist fighters are released as authorities hope that will secure the freedom of two prominent prisoners in Mali. The verdict in the trial of three men accused of supporting the Westgate mall attackers in Kenya has been postponed. We'll look back at the attack that killed 67 people. And millions of students in Cameroon return to school for the first time since March. We'll see the changes authorities have had to make to keep children and teenagers safe this school year. We begin in Mali, where more than 100 suspected jihadist prisoners have been released this weekend. Negotiating team members say that was done in an effort to secure the release of two high-profile prisoners, politician Soumaïla Cissé and French charity worker Sophie Petronin. Cissé served as the country's finance minister between 1993 and 2000. He was kidnapped by gunmen while campaigning last March. Petronin ran a charity for malnourished and orphaned children. She was abducted in 2016. Journalist Mohamed Salaha is in Bamako. He has more on the fate of those two prisoners tonight.
The rumor of the release of Sophie Petronin and Soumaïla Cissé, Malian opposition leader, is on everyone's lips in Mali. But sources close to Soumaïla Cissé say they don't have any concrete information relative to the immediate release of Soumaïla Cissé. But according to confidential sources, the two hostages will be released shortly, but we don't know concretely. In this kind of information, it's very important to remain vigilant because change can happen at any time. It's true that prisoners were released, and this is probably to release Soumaïla Cissé and Sophie.
And so we heard that close to 100 prisoners were released in exchange, hopefully for the exchange of those, for the release of those two prisoners. We've also heard that some of those prisoners were flown to other parts of the country. What more do we know about that?
That's true. The operation of release consists of a discrete release of several. It consists of the release of more than 100 prisoners, according to some sources, and the release happened especially in the two areas of Mali, in the north and in the center. It's important to notice that in the north, most of prisoners were released in Tessalit, which is close to Kidal, and this area is very known in fight of terrorism. So it's important also to notice that according to information, the release of Soumaïla and Sophie may be happen in Tessalit.
A very busy news day for Mali. The country also appointed a new government today. Do we know whether any of those new names had a role to play in this prisoner exchange?
The new government is composed by members of former armed group and Algeria peace agreement signature. So those movements, those people know extensively the north and the big area, and they are very influent in negotiation with jihadists, but officially there is no statement that show that they are included in the freedom of those prisoners or this exchange. But we know that those people have influence, and definitely they collaborate they collaborate since Soumaïla Cissé and Sophie Orden have been kidnapped. They keep collaborating. Definitely they may play a role, but at this moment it's difficult to say that they directly played a role, but they collaborate regarding information and regarding also any kind of tips they need to know about the hostages.
The long-awaited verdict in the trial of three men involved in the Westgate terror attack has now been postponed. The men were charged with helping militants carry out the deadly attack on the Nairobi shopping mall in 2013. The magistrate in charge of the trial has attributed the delay to, quote, loose ends that need to be tied up. 67 people were killed when 4 masked gunmen raided the mall. France 24's Laurent Berstecher takes a look back at the attack.
September 21st, 2013, explosions rang out in Nairobi's luxury Westgate shopping mall. 4 gunmen armed with grenades and assault rifles had just stormed the complex and opened fire on civilians. As gunshots and screams echoed around the mall, Kenyan security forces massed outside the building, but lacking any information or visibility on what was happening inside, it took them 3 hours to launch their assault. As rescue operations began, crowds of civilians could be seen fleeing the mall with their hands raised. Some had been playing dead for hours. Followed 4 days of chaotic fighting inside the mall, 4 days still shrouded in mystery. Some reports found the attackers had been holed up in a storeroom since day 1 and died on day 3 when part of the building collapsed. Other reports alleged instances of friendly fire between counter-terrorism units and the Kenyan army, as well as widespread looting by soldiers. Kenyan authorities also issued misleading statements claiming there were up to 15 gunmen and that hostages were being held, which was later proven untrue. On October 25th, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta officially announced the end of the siege on national television. The attack, in which at least 67 people were killed, was claimed by Islamist group Al-Shabaab and remains one of the deadliest acts of terrorism in Kenyan history. 4 Somali nationals were arrested in the weeks that followed and were charged with aiding the terrorists. One of them was released in January 2019 due to lack of evidence.
An update now on the trial of Rwandan actor Paul Rusesabagina. The country's top prosecutor wants to merge it with the trial of 19 rebel group members who are currently in state custody. The fighters belong to the National Liberation Group, an organization that the 66-year-old actor admitted he had backed, but he has continued to deny any involvement in violence or killings. Paul Rusesabagina, who was portrayed as a hero in the movie Hotel Rwanda, had lived outside the country for 25 years before suddenly reappearing in handcuffs in Rwanda last month. Human Rights Watch says he was, quote, forcibly disappeared. The head of Ethiopia's Civil Aviation Authority says all aircraft are now banned from flying over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam close to the border with Sudan. The dam is currently being built and could start generating power within the next 12 months. But Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt have been locked in a fierce dispute over the filing and operation of the dam, which sits on the Blue Nile, which is a tributary of the Nile River. No reason was given as to why flying over the construction project is now banned. Finally, schools in Cameroon are in the process of reopening for the first time since March. Primary and secondary school students returned to school this Monday, but universities won't reopen until October 15th. Students will be learning in shifts to avoid overcrowding, and like in most countries around the world, schools have been forced to make many changes. Regina Sando has this report.
One of the golden rules for the school year is hand washing. At the state school in Yaoundé, students disinfect their shoes. Temperature checks are compulsory for about 2,700 students. The school has got 30 teachers and administrators together. Under the supervision of their principal, Kingwe Mohamedou, they have the daily task of reinforcing coronavirus barrier measures.
Cette année, effectivement, est particulière. Ce que vous voyez ce matin, premier jour de rentrée, vous verrez cela tous les jours jusqu'au dernier jour des classes. Nous avons apprêté certaines salles spéciales pour des enfants qui présenteraient des températures élevées et qui seraient suivis par nos infirmières.
Only half of the 5,400 students enrolled for the academic year are in the school this morning. Classrooms like this will accommodate students twice per day, alternating morning and afternoon shifts. The Cameroonian government has employed more teachers to reduce the workload. This teacher has 60 children in her class instead of the usual 120 before the outbreak of the virus.
Covid-19 nous a certainement permis de retrouver les effectifs que nous avons toujours souhaités. Parce que maintenant, nous sommes dans une classe avec un effectif qui nous permet de circuler librement et de pouvoir donner le meilleur de nous-mêmes à nos apprenants puisque le nombre est réduit.
Families are forced to adapt to the new schedule.
Franck, Brian, il est 11h déjà, il faut que vous vous apprêtez pour l'école.
Mary Franks now has to get her two boys ready for school in the late hours of the morning, a challenge for the single mother who has to create a new schedule.
J'ai l'habitude de sortir avec les enfants. Je sais qu'ils vont rentrer à 16h ou 15h. Mais maintenant, s'ils doivent partir à midi et que je ne suis pas là, je ne sais pas comment, je ne sais pas qui va les contrôler puisque nous restons juste à 3. Et là, c'est déjà difficile.
13 million Cameroonian students are back at school, a return to class under tight surveillance by the authorities who are still worried about an increase in the number of virus cases in the country.
That wraps up Eye on Africa on this Monday. Thank you for watching France 24. The news continues on France 24 right after this.
Because a new page of history gets written every day. Because breaking news can't wait. Information everywhere. In all situations. On every subject. Understanding the world. Imagining the world. France 24. A different take on the news.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.
In Cameroon's southern region, the army's conflict with English-speaking separatists has spiraled into an unprecedented battle with an enemy testing the government's resolve. Before deteriorating into an armed conflict, the initial peaceful uprising was led by activists simply wanting respect for their English-speaking identity in bilingual Cameroon.
Nous avions affaire à des sécessionnistes qui réclamaient l'indépendance de l'État virtuel d'Ambazonie. Mais au jour d'aujourd'hui, nous avons affaire à des hors-la-loi, c'est-à-dire nous sommes passés de la sécession au grand banditisme.
Escorted by the army, our reporters gave us a rare glimpse into a bloody conflict. Don't miss this compelling edition of Reporters on France 24 and France24.com.